Good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, April 18th, 2025, and I am a logical lefty. Welcome to the stream. I got some good news today and some, not so good news today. But majority of the stories here, two good things happened for those of, the for a couple of people who were unjustly grabbed and imprisoned by our government, by ICE, and so a couple of good stories on that. Yes, lots of work left to do, but I can't wait to get into the details. Okay, so we're gonna do that. We also have the FSU shooting. Who is that alleged shooter? We're going to dive into it. Oh boy. Then we have, of course, terrible news on food inspections, the FDA. What is going on? Is this going to make America healthy again? Short answer, no, it's not. Um, so long answer, well, you're going to have to tune in for that. And then, of course, we have David Hogg versus Democratic incumbents. Interesting. So you've got the vice chair of the DNC promising lots of primaries on the do nothing Democrats. Uh, it's not being received very well by said do nothing Democrats. So, of course, a lot of anger there. So we're going to get into that. Um, and then, of course, how do I feel about it? We're just going to have to wait for me to tell you because I will. All right. Anyway, that's the show that we have today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very important that you do so. Speaking of people that are helping keep us on the air, I do want to thank new YouTube member. I'd have called them Chazwazzers. So I appreciate the Simpsons reference there with the handle where hamburgers eat people. Yes, that's right. Rand McNally, where people walk on their hands and hamburgers eat people. Oh, and they wear shoes on their hands, I think. I think that's what it was. So I love the reference there. So thank you for becoming a member and supporting the show. Uh, and yeah, I appreciate the laugh because, man, in these times, I need it. I need a good laugh. All right. So with that said, you can sign up to become a channel member by hitting the join button below on YouTube. If you're watching, you can also become a member on our Twitch channel. And failing all that, if you want to bypass all that, you can become a patron over on the Patreon page. That's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. All right. So that's how you can sign up to support independent, progressive media. With that said, why don't we dive into the stories here? And we'll start out with an update on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. A little bit of good news on this Friday. Oh, you know what? Before I get into that, I do have to fix this. Yes, that's right. I have to fix something. Oops. We're going to do it live. We're doing it live.
We'll do it live!
There we go. Okay. This is how we do it with a one-man show. The search for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man mistakenly sent to an El Salvadoran prison camp, is over. Senator Chris Van Hollen said late on Thursday night that he had indeed met with Garcia, confirming that he is currently still alive and seemingly well. In fact, I'm going to show you a picture here of their meeting. And you see that? they're having some water. It doesn't look too bad there. Great. Now, on X, the Maryland senator wrote, I said my main goal of this trip was to meet with Kilmar. Tonight, I had that chance. I have called his wife, Jennifer, to pass along his message of love. I look forward to providing a full update on my return. So, now look, I am very glad that I was wrong. I was expecting the worst here. I was expecting Garcia to have disappeared or be dead. Okay. That said, I'm glad he's not, but he is still an innocent man stuck in a prison camp. He does not belong there. So real justice means bringing him home. Okay. And so again, that's where the good news ends. Images of Van Hollen's meeting with Abrego Garcia were first posted online by Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele, who was refusing to return him to the United States. Bukele said on X after the meeting that Garcia will remain in El Salvador's custody now that he's been confirmed healthy. He posted this. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, miraculously risen from the death camps and torture, now sipping margaritas with Senator Van Hollen in the tropical paradise of El Salvador. Now that he's been confirmed healthy, he gets the honor of staying in El Salvador's custody in a prison camp. I mean, that he doesn't belong in. Okay. How much, by the way, I'm curious how much they cleaned up Garcia for this. Okay. Because they had to have. They know that the scrutiny is on them. So they probably had to clean him up pretty nicely to say, oh, look, see, we didn't torture him that much. He looks fine. See, everything's great. Everything's awesome. No, it's not great. Look, here's the thing. As long as Donald Trump is paying Bukele to keep Garcia there, Bukele is going to keep him. He's getting about, $6 million to hold people from, sent from the United States that were Venezuelan migrants or people from Central America in El Salvador. This is taxpayer money that's going into Bukele's pocket. He ain't going to give that up. This is why each side, by the way, keeps passing the buck, because Trump doesn't want him here. Doesn't matter if he's legally allowed to be here or even if he's a citizen, right? Doesn't matter to Donald Trump. He's one of them, the others. And so, yes, we're going to send him to this foreign prison camp, okay? Now, that said, in an Oval Office meeting with President Trump on Monday, Bukele said, I don't have power to return Garcia to the United States. Would love to, can't do it. That same day, though, Attorney General Pam Bondi said the United States would be more than happy to provide a plane for Abrego Garcia to come back to the United States, should El Salvador allow his release. But then also, well, he'll just get deported again. Well, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Now, Bukele also had claimed that I can't release Garcia because I can't put terrorists back into the United States. Wait a minute. Terrorist? Who's a terrorist? Garcia does not have a criminal record. There was a domestic issue between he and his wife at one point. That didn't lead to any arrests or charges. And even if there had been, you don't send someone who has a domestic, disturbance or whatever on their record to a foreign prison camp meant for terrorists. That said, MAGA supporters on social media, funny enough, they suddenly now care about domestic violence. First they're calling him a gang member, which is not true. And then, he's a white beater too. No, you're thinking of the police. Police are the biggest gang in America. 28% of them admitted to perpetrating domestic violence against their spouses in a survey. This is self-reporting, okay? So they said, yeah, we did that. And 40% of the officers in this survey reported that they had behaved violently towards members of their family. Now, Abrego Garcia, he's not a cop. He's a sheet metal worker who's legally allowed to work and live in the United States. And they want to get rid of him. Now, even more rage from the White House. In fact, they called Van Hollen's efforts to support Abrego Garcia, quote, disgusting, and said that Trump will continue to stand on the side of law-abiding Americans. Oh, really? That's pretty funny because Donald Trump himself is not a law-abiding American. He is a convicted criminal. Abrego Garcia is not. The projection here is absolutely amazing. It is. But here's the thing, though. These flights, this is why the right is doing character assassination, okay? These flights, these deportations are lacking in one important thing: due process. The President of the United States, ICE, they're ignoring the constitutional right to due process, which is supposed to cover everyone, not just citizens. And here's why. Without due process, you cannot prove that you are a citizen. Take the case of 20-year-old Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, who was recently detained in a Florida jail, even after his mother had presented his birth certificate in court to prove that, hey, yes, he was born here, he is a citizen. Now, the good news on that, though, is that he has been released as of Thursday evening, but once again, just like this, shouldn't have happened in the first place. If you can't prove your citizenship or legal right to be in this country, then the government can kidnap you and deport you. Put you in a country where you've never been before. All they have to do that now is accuse you of being a terrorist, and you're gone. And that's it.
Bing, 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 boom. It's gone.
You're gone. You're gone. You're in a foreign prison camp now. Like, that's how dangerous this is. That is extremely frightening, especially since Donald Trump has said that he wants to start sending over the homegrowns, and that Bukele should build about 5 more prisons. So he is planning to send a lot of homegrowns, he calls them, to El Salvador. That American citizens, sending them without due process to a foreign prison camp. That is extremely frightening. Okay, look, I don't want to, get away from the good thing here, because I'm glad Garcia is alive. That said, we got to get him back home to Maryland, back home to his family. And so the fight for justice here isn't over until we're able to bring him home and to stop Donald Trump from sending any more innocent people to this foreign prison camp. Okay. Moving on. An American citizen illegally charged with being an unauthorized alien in Florida has been released after having to spend the night in jail on a 48-hour hold requested by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, 20-year-old, was arrested by Florida Highway Patrol on Wednesday when the car he was riding in was pulled over for a routine traffic stop. His attorney, Mutaki Akbar, explained that the American citizen, born in Grady County, Georgia, where he lives in the city of Cairo, was crossing into Florida for work. So he was doing some construction in Tallahassee. It's about 45 minutes away from his home. Now, Florida, of course, has done a crackdown on immigration with SB 4. So that's one of those laws where it's like, oh, we're just going to, try to get rid of all of our so-called illegals, the undocumented immigrants. We got to get rid of the illegals, got to get rid of this, scare them from coming into Florida. Well, this guy is an American citizen. And apparently you're scaring people like him from coming into Florida too, to come in and work. Now, the law, as I mentioned, in which Lopez Gomez was arrested, was Florida's SB 4. It penalizes illegal immigrants over the age of 18 who knowingly enter or attempt to enter the state after entering the United States by eluding or avoiding examination or inspection by immigration officers. So there's that. Now, that law, by the way, is so extreme that it has been temporarily blocked by a federal judge, according to news reports, and a spokesperson for the Immigrant Rights Coalition working with Lopez Gomez's family. So, but what happened here? I think it's pretty clear. Lopez Gomez was racially profiled. That's it. Racially profiled by police while he was on his way to work. That's it. And I mean, what else can you say about that?
The Republican Party's racist.
Because they supported this. They passed this law, and now you've got American citizens getting tripped up in it, of course. Now, it gets even worse, though. On Thursday, he was told that even though he had a birth certificate showing that he was born here, his mother brought it in, they couldn't let him go because ICE had to hold him. That's it. Leon County Judge LaShawn Riggins was handed a copy of his birth certificate brought by Lopez Gomez's mother, Sebastiana Perez. In looking at it, she said, and feeling it and holding it up to the light, the court can clearly see the watermark to show that this is indeed an authentic document. But you think they're printing off fake birth certificates? What is this, like birtherism? Hey, it did start with Donald Trump. He did do the birther stuff. So there you go. Now, she also found that there was no probable cause for the charge of crossing into Florida illegally, but said that she didn't have jurisdiction to release Lopez Gomez because ICE had requested a hold. Court records show, under an ICE hold or immigration detainer, ICE asks local law enforcement agencies to notify it before releasing what they call a removable alien, and to hold the alien for up to 48 hours to give DHS time to take the migrant into custody. Once again, American citizen. Because here we are. We're letting American citizens get arrested, needlessly thrown in jail for days, and not able to get out. That's what's going on here. Now, Attorney Elena Greer, director and co-founder of the Community Justice Project, which represents the Florida Immigrant Coalition, but not Lopez Gomez specifically, said of this situation, quote, "It's a series of horrors. No one should have been arrested under this law, let alone a U.S. citizen. The judge, the prosecutor, the sheriff, and the jail are basically all throwing their hands up and saying, ICE told us to hold him, so we're going to keep holding him, even though no one disagrees with the fact that he's a citizen, so they're right now unlawfully holding a U.S. citizen. They've dismissed the underlying criminal charges, so the only reason they're holding him is because ICE sent a piece of paper over that says, please hold this person for us. We'll come pick him up later." Which, of course, it didn't happen because he has been released, and thankfully so. That said, it's very likely that he is just one of many people that have and will, in the future, become victims of this right-wing terror campaign against non-white Americans. That's what's going on. This is pure racism. It's racial profiling. And I think it's also fueled by ICE's desperation to be able to hit the deportation numbers that Trump wants. You see, they haven't exactly been hitting their quotas, and so they're going extra hard, okay, and just targeting anyone, Latino Americans, brown people, etc., who they might consider to be illegal. That's it. That's it. Look, here's the thing, though. Trump really believes, or at least I think that he believes. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But he keeps saying, like, oh, they're sending millions and millions of illegal immigrant criminals. They're pouring over the border. Like, making you think like that it looks like World War Z or something. Okay? And for his MAGA fans, I mean, they eat it right up. Oh, with a spoon. They're like, oh, yes, yeah, they're pouring right over the border. Pouring right over the border. Well, yeah, they're not. There's no amount of evidence, though, out there that you can show them that will actually change their minds.
Just forget about the evidence.
That's what they do. They just continue to hold on to this like insane delusion that we're being invaded by immigrants. And it not just like, oh, it's people coming over, like we've got a problem because we can't handle them with the resources that we have, and they're creating an issue on the border and all that stuff. And we just don't have the resources for them. No, that's not what they're saying. Okay, they're literally calling these people mentally ill, violent, rapist invaders coming to murder you and take your job. No, no, no. It's absolutely insane. And again, no matter how much you try to push back against it, they're not going to believe you anyway. That's why the best thing we can do is to get this guy and his cultist followers out of office and away from any political power. Until we do that, we're going to be stuck in this insanity that is literally rounding up U.S. citizens for no reason. Okay. All right. Move on. Here we go. A Trump-supporting white supremacist has been accused of the recent mass shooting at Florida State University. Now, one survivor of that shooting recently spoke to NBC's Haley Jackson about the suspect, which is a 20-year-old named Phoenix Eichner, who was apparently a member of Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA and had been kicked out of a college club for being a Nazi. I kid you not. Eichner allegedly shot and killed 2 people and injured 5 others. He was taken into custody alive. That's, of course, how you know he's white. Okay? Had he been black, Latino, Muslim, or transgender, he would probably end up being dead. Now, before I get any further, though, I do want to show you the interview that NBC happened to have with one of the survivors named Reed Saybold, who knew the Suspect.
I was the president of a political talk group we called the Political Roundtable, and he joined the club when I was at TCC. Basically our only rule was no Nazis, colloquially speaking. And he espoused so much white supremacist rhetoric and far right rhetoric as well, to the point where we had to exercise that rule. I also know he was a member of the TCC Turning Point chapter. So it wasn't necessarily a formal kicking out, but he was asked not to come back, and was really what had happened was we had, it was a debate back and forth. And after enough times, I mean, he did not feel welcome because he was not welcome with his rhetoric. We allow people of all, beliefs, creeds, whatever. And he somehow found a way to not fit the bill on everyone else.
That's because he was a Nazi. Okay. And shocker, his dad is a cop. Or I'm sorry, his mom is a cop, a local sheriff's deputy. Okay. In fact, Sheriff Walter McNeil told reporters that the suspect was, quote, steeped in the Leon County Sheriff's Office family and was engaged in a number of training programs that we have, so it's not a surprise to us that he had access to weapons. He used, I believe, his mother's service weapon to carry out the shooting. Eichner was also a member of the Sheriff's Youth Advisory Council, which is designed to provide an open line of communication between the youth of Leon County and local law enforcement, according to a news release from 2021. McNeil described him as a, quote, long-standing member of the council. Eichner also is a registered Republican, according to Florida registration records, and according to Siebold, he constantly talked about, quote, the ravages of multiculturalism and communism, and how it's ruining America. Yes, that's right. Communism.
Pink-haired communist.
Where's the communism in this country? Where is it? Where is it? Look, nowhere. Look, if you believe that communism has taken root in this country, then you probably have right-wing brain rot. Because it ain't nowhere. It ain't nowhere. There is no, oh, because it's the communism. Where's the communism? You can't really point that out because it doesn't exist. That's it. I mean, look, these people think like giving poor people food is communism. Okay. No, that's insanity. All right. Social welfare programs are not communism. All right. But again, if you have right-wing brain rot, then you think that anything and everything is somehow communism. Okay, but that said, why did he go on a mass shooting spree? Nobody knows. Look, we don't know a motive yet of why he targeted FSU. I don't know. But that said, he's pretty well steeped in election conspiracy theories, as well as racism. That's right, racism. Now, he claimed that President Biden illegally came into office in 2020, also claimed that Rosa Parks was in the wrong, of course, and that black people are ruining his neighborhood. This is according to a fellow politics student, Lucas Luzetti. Quote, I remember thinking that this man should not have access to firearms, Luzetti told USA Today. But what are you supposed to do? His mother was a cop, and of course, Florida does not have very good red flag laws. That must be communism, right? Oh, jeez. Now, that said, what's Trump's reaction to this? Defending guns. Because, of course, he told reporters, quote, these things are terrible, but the gun doesn't do the shooting. The people do. All right, sure. Let's focus on the person then. All right. This is a racist, seeming MAGA supporter. I wonder how quickly Trump is going to change the subject now that he knows it's someone who generally agrees with him on things. My bet is he'll either change the subject or just never talk about this guy again. Or worse, MAGA will make things up. Oh, it's a false flag. He's an extreme leftist, a transgender liberal, that's right. And he's just there to make us look bad. No, the only people that are making the far right look bad is this guy and other unhinged MAGA chuds. There's a picture out there of him actually wearing a MAGA hat. Yeah, not surprising. Not surprising at all. Okay. Here we go. Moving on. So this story is probably going to make you sick. Nadia Yvette Chambers writes, UK Guardian said he just got released 2 minutes ago. Yeah, I talked about that. So Yes. Good news. Good news. But at the same time, there is other other people who have not been released, and so yeah. Anyway, thank you for that super chat, by the way. Moving on. Welcome back to the jungle. Various news agencies are now reporting that the FDA is drawing up plans that would end routine food safety inspections. Now, this is at a time where NBC News has learned that the FDA had refused to publicize a recent E. coli outbreak that in the lettuce that tore through 15 states. All courtesy, of course, of President Donald Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Make America healthy again? Maybe if you survive E. coli. So here are the details, okay? First, the FDA is suspending quality control testing at the Food Emergency Response Network, FERN, proficiency testing program. According to Reuters, the FERN program tests for parasites like cyclospora in spinach and the pesticide glyphosate, in barley, among other foods. The suspension was announced internally at the FDA on Tuesday via email distributed to staff. And that email also talked about staff that are on the way out. Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Now, the program oversees testing at about 170 labs, which will no longer get quality control checks through at least September 30th. Now, this is the result, of course, of RFK Jr.'s staffing cuts. His reduction in force will see about 20,000 people leave through layoffs and departures. But that's not all. No. Secondly, and even more disturbing, is a report from CBS News that the FDA is currently making plans to end most food safety inspections at the federal level. Now, they're claiming that food safety is something that should only be done at the local level. So they're trying to explain it away. It's like, we don't need the federal government for this. No, you could do it at the local level. It's fine. I mean, do you really want inspectors to duplicate the work that has already been done by the states? But there's a problem with that argument. It turns out that the states have already been pulling back on their inspections. Okay? Under a Biden-era reorganization, the FDA had cut millions of dollars for state-level food inspections effective this year. According to Time magazine, the Government Accountability Office issued a report in January of 2025 urging the FDA to strengthen inspection efforts to protect the U.S. food supply, meaning that they had some problems. Not only that, but major parts of the landmark 2011 Food Safety Modernization Act, including rules that farmers must monitor water that they spray on vegetables for manure, poop, were being delayed or rolled back. So, hey, it's fine. You're spraying the vegetables with poop water. That's totally cool, right? That's going to be totally fine. No, it's not. Look, we have massive deregulation and the defunding of food safety rules. That is not good. This is going to be very bad. In fact, according to Darren Detweiler, a food safety advocate whose son, a toddler at the time, died of E. coli in 1993 during an outbreak at the Jack in the Box restaurants, said, quote, "We have always had a problem with having adequate funding and staffing for the level of complication that is food safety in the United States. This lack of funding has coincided with a number of food illness outbreaks in the U.S. in recent years." So this is a problem that goes before Donald Trump, but now is being, of course, exacerbated by Donald Trump. Okay, so now in 2024 alone, you had an E. coli outbreak linked to slivered onions at McDonald's that killed one person, an E. coli outbreak linked to organic carrots sold in grocery stores, which also killed a person, and a listeria outbreak linked to Boar's Head deli meat that resulted in 10 people losing their lives. Not good. Now, not only that, but the state's rapid response teams that were tasked with moving quickly during outbreaks saw their budgets cut by around 60%. So, gone. States also saw budgets for produce inspections cut by 40%, and funding for states' manufactured food programs, infrastructure, and training cut by 50%. So, we're making these massive cuts. We were making these massive cuts before, and now Trump is coming in to finish the job, to say, well, why don't we just cut, if not most, if not all, food inspection at the federal level, at a time where states have already massively cut their own food inspection. I mean, it's insane. Now, look, obviously, if funding and staffing is the problem on the state level, which I just pointed out, then why is RFK Jr. pulling funding and staffing from the FDA? Because at least, with the FDA, obviously, you're not going to catch everything, okay? But if you have more federal inspections, it can make up for the lack of state inspections. But they're not doing that. But it gets worse, okay? You see, the National Advisory Committee on Microbiological Criteria for Foods and the National Advisory Committee on Meat and Poultry Inspection, they have also been cut. The first was studying which babies might be at risk from the deadly bacteria found at an Abbott Nutrition infant formula plant. Remember the baby food? I remember that during the pandemic. The right wing was freaking out like, the baby formula. What a shortage, Joe Biden's baby formula shortage. Now, of course, they blame that on undocumented immigrants, but in reality, no, it's not the undocumented immigrants that were coming in and taking all the baby formula away. No, it was Abbott, that company that was creating tainted baby food formula, okay? And so that's one of the problems here. Not enough inspections, not enough food safety. That's one of the big problems here. So again, the result here is that all of us, or for all of us, is we're going to see more sicknesses from tainted food. They're not only going to increase, but, and here's what's worse, we're not going to hear about it. We're not going to know if our food is tainted until we actually get sick from it. And we could die from that. And look, the strategy here is it's on purpose. Okay? It goes back to COVID. Remember, Donald Trump was saying, why don't we just stop testing? Why don't we just stop testing people for COVID? That way the COVID numbers will go down and I'll look better. That's what they're doing here. Under these changes, the country will appear to have less foodborne illnesses, less outbreaks, because they're not doing any testing. Fewer facilities will fail food inspections. But that's because there will be less food inspections. I mean, I cannot express how horrific and disastrous all of this is going to be. We're going back to the jungle, folks. Remember, this is a book published by Upton Sinclair back in 1906. Okay? And look, the entire thing was supposed to be like, this is what's going on under capitalism, and this is why we should go to socialism. That was the whole purpose of Upton Sinclair's book. But people instead, they looked at the horrific conditions of these, meat packing plants and factories, that were creating the food, and they were looking at the horrific conditions and saying, oh my God, this is terrible. We need food regulation. Now, Sinclair, in his book, described walls painted with animal blood and plastered with flesh, rotten beef, doctored with chemicals, and dead rats and sawdust that were swept into sausage meat. Sinclair talked about workers infected with tuberculosis, coughing up blood, spitting it onto the floors, and using open latrines next to processed meat. That's what was happening. Deborah Bloom, author of The Poison Squad, One Chemist's Single-Minded Crusade for Food Safety at the Turn of the 20th Century, says, Food manufacturing was unregulated. There was license to do whatever you wanted to maximize profits. There's nothing that could be done to the food that's illegal because there were no food safety laws. There were. And it looks like the way that we're going, we are heading right back into the bad old times. Okay. Yikes. Alderman Gomez, thank you for gifting 5 memberships over on YouTube. Thank you. And Nadia Yvette Chambers, thank you for becoming a member as well. So thank you for supporting independent progressive media. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so got one more story for y'all here. And it's actually one where the Democrats, or at least some of them, are getting smart about primaries. There's also the child labor stuff in this book that we're also going back to. Currently, Wynn, you're absolutely correct. And I do appreciate smartest audience in the world, okay? Because that is something I've been talking about child labor being brought back. And of course, you have child undocumented labor. A lot of them end up in these meatpacking plants that are unsafe. And so they're getting exploited and also being injured and killed because of the lack of safety. And now here we are, not even inspecting the food anymore. Just it's horrific. Definitely back to the bad old times. Okay. But anyway, let's dive into this David Hogg plan to fix the Democrats. DNC Vice Chair David Hogg has a plan to try to fix the Democratic Party. Primaries. Now, of course, primaries are not making corporate Democrats very happy. In fact, they're pretty angry at him. So now, let me give you some details first. The group Leaders We Deserved announced on Wednesday that it will be spending about $20 million to help elect younger, more progressive leaders. That included primary challengers to House Democrats who happen to be in safe Democratic seats. So now, he said, the first and most important thing here to understand is that it isn't necessarily just out with the old and in with the new. I would say it's out with the ineffective and in with the effective. That is what we're doing here, Hogg told ABC News' Jay O'Brien Wednesday afternoon. Any person that has eyes can see that we are 20% approval with our base, and we need dramatic change. Yes, we do. Again, at a time where Donald Trump has come in and is completely wrecking the government, destroying agencies. Doge is, Doge is doing what Doge is doing, okay? And making all these cuts everywhere, firing people en masse from their jobs. And then you have Republicans in Congress that are gutting Medicaid and the SNAP program. And yet you have Democrats at 27% approval? That is a disaster. No, there's no way. And it's because, though, Democrats aren't fighting. And so, yes, David Hogg wants to fix that. He actually wants to get Democrats in office who want to fight. Now, of course, the party establishment is not too happy about this. House Democrats told Axios that while Hogg is not targeting battleground district members, they believe he will divert attention and resources away from their races and the fight to retake the House. Of course, yes. What a disappointment from leadership. This is swing district representative Hillary Scholten of Michigan saying, I can think of a million better things to do with $20 million right now. Why don't you go beg your donors, Dalton? Probably do that. She says, fighting Democrats might get likes online, but it's not what restores majorities. Then what's your plan to restore the majority? Do you have one? No, I don't see one. Now, primaries. Here's the thing. Primaries actually make the party stronger because you actually have to serve your constituents to avoid getting primaried out. That's what Republicans did. Now, look at that. They've got the Senate, the House, the White House, and the Supreme Court. Seems like what they did was pretty effective. And yes, they would primary out people who did not do what the party wanted them to do, what the voters wanted them to do. Now, of course, they want to do a bunch of heinous, horrific things, but the party listened to their base because the base voted them out in primaries. But anyway, wouldn't it be nice to have a Democratic Party, by the way, that knows how to win, to beat Republicans? That'd be great. But more rage. Another vulnerable House Democrat, speaking on the condition of anonymity, called this plan a, quote, very counterproductive and counterintuitive. It sure would be nice to have some of that financial support. Then you actually have to serve the voters instead of the donors. Okay? If you want financial support, then actually do something to earn it. And here's the thing, though. Financial support doesn't mean anything if you don't have a winning message. Look, in 2024, for example, Vice President Kamala Harris spent $2 billion to lose to Donald Trump. Trump did not spend that much money. Trump spent a much, much smaller amount of money because most of that money that was given to him went to his court cases. So his campaign really didn't have nearly as much as Harris did. And Trump still won. And not only did Trump win, but Democrats lost Congress. Now, the lesson here is play to the base. Give people a reason to show up. Harris, she didn't do that. She tried relying on getting Republican voters to cross over to support Democrats, and of course that didn't happen. Because Republican voters massively supported Donald Trump. They were looking for the mythical moderate Republican. Oh, the anti-Trump Republican. The fever broke. And we got all these Republicans that came over and voted for Democrat. No, that didn't happen. Didn't happen at all. Harris started that way and then hooked up with Liz Cheney. Yes, exactly right, Jay Hogg, the ball dragon, in the chat here. But look, that didn't happen. But that's not the only issue with the Democratic Party. As I've pointed out in several different segments here, there's a bit of a gerontocracy problem in the Democratic Party. Okay, you got people in there that are literally dying of old age. Okay, in Congress. I mean, that's insane. And look, these people are getting put into leadership positions. The party chose Jerry Connolly, a 70-year-old cancer patient, to run the oversight committee over someone like AOC. Why? Well, it was because it wasn't her turn. Qualifications be damned. They voted for him based on his seniority. That's it. That's a huge problem. When you are not choosing the best candidate because, it's someone else's turn. Well, you got a real problem here. Real problem. This is why the Democratic Party is out of touch with its own base. They have leadership that shouldn't be in the leadership, like Chuck Schumer, for example. But again, this is not just about age, obviously. No, Hakeem Jeffries is a rather young guy, but he's got the same mindset as Chuck Schumer. And that's because he was chosen for that role based on his ability to raise money from donors, not to win, but just to raise money. On that point, David Hogg said that the candidates that his group will be supporting will not be taking corporate money. Quote, we want to make sure that our young people, younger voters in particular, know that there are Democrats out there that are there to represent them, that are not there to represent the special interests that have destroyed so much of the American dream. Hell yes. Hell yes. Now, of course, that said, the ones who take corporate money are pissed. Another House Democrat said, I think this is a mistake. Now, are people pissed? I don't know a single person who was happy about it. But yeah, no one in your cocktail circuit. Now, a third told Axios it seems inappropriate for a DNC vice chair to threaten sitting Democrats. Once again, this is how they view primaries. It's a threat. No, it's a contest to see who is the best to be able to run for that seat. Who is the strongest candidate? But they see that as a threat because maybe they're not the strongest candidate. Now, a fourth said that they're totally dumbfounded that instead of focusing on winning, we're focusing inward in a circular firing squad. That's because you're not winning in the first place. There needs to be massive changes. The Democratic Party needs a massive overhaul. You need to get rid of what is not working. Gut the leadership. Primary the Cuellars, the Fettermans. Get rid of the people who are not serving the constituents. And again, of course, it's the people that are likely to be targeted that are angry about this, obviously. Now, progressives, however, they're all in. Representative Jim McGovern, Massachusetts, says, actually, he makes some good points. We do have some ranking members who should step aside. And he said that Democrats also have long-term members who are terrific. So again, this is not about age, not just about gerontocracy. It is about whether or not you are ready to fight. You're ready to fight for your constituents, and you're ready to fight against Republicans, against Donald Trump. If you're not there, if you're not ready to do that, then you will have no place in this party. Again, if you are afraid of competition, in my view, it is because you're afraid of losing that competition. So you want to make sure that you don't have any. And a lot of these Democrats, they're used to not having any real competition, any real primaries. Because there was a DNC that was looking to crush primaries, to get rid of them, to flood the zone with so much right-wing money, like Democratic Majority for Israel money, funded by Republican donors, that would crush progressives and wipe out their primary challenges. They love to rig the game, okay, against progressive people who challenge them. That's what's going on. Now, that said, a fifth House Democrat who spoke anonymously said that Democrats, quote, should have the most effective members right now. Competition is not a bad thing. Exactly. Look, here's the thing. I love this idea because Democrats need to learn that there is no such thing as a safe seat. If you are not representing the people, if you're taking money from corporations and representing them, special interests, and you're voting not for your voters' interests, but for the corporations' interests, then you deserve to lose. Go work for those corporations instead. Leave the governing to people who actually are fighting to make people's lives better. Okay. Citizens United doesn't help our situation either. Yeah, of course. When Hakeem Jeffries cries that he has no leverage, he should not be in leadership. I agree. Absolutely. And I think about some of these Democrats is that they do not have the stomach for a fight because they're paid to lose, paid to give in to Republicans, paid to give in to corporations. And they do not know how to fight against fascism. Because what they've been doing all along is setting the stage and enabling it. Whether or not they're aware of it, that's what they've been doing. So I absolutely love this challenge here. Yes, let's primary corporate Democrats and then take back our democracy. They just want to sell books or use our money for podcasts featuring Nazis, says Tracy Blackburn. Oof, nailed it. Ouch. Delaware only has one representative, and she is a transgender woman. Sarah McBride worked to make our state Senate district better for us. She's now doing it as a congresswoman. There you go. All right. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for liking and sharing the stream. Thank you so much for those gifted memberships, by the way, as well as people signing up to be members. Y'all make this show possible. You make what I do possible, and I could not do this without you. And so thank you. You make the show. Okay. And so I just want to tell you how much I really appreciate you, and love that you tune in, and that you support the show. I do really appreciate it. So thank you so much. All right. Try to have a good weekend. I know things are tough. Things are definitely tough. But have a good weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Until then, take care of yourselves, your families, and your communities, and continue the fight for justice. We'll see you Monday.